So the Chinese are now the primary vehicle for getting that sort of help in. And that is really important. If there was some way to lock that off, it would really hurt the Russians in terms of missiles and especially optics on things like tanks. But for now, those flows are there. Providing more than that risks a rupture. And in today's environment, when the Chinese are under pressure from so many different angles, someone targeting trade directly would probably be enough to push them over the edge. Yeah, I'm afraid that the green transition in its current form is a horrible idea. The technology really just isn't ready. Solar panels and wind turbines are great if you're in places that are sunny or windy, but that's not where 85% of the world's population lives. And in most places, especially places like Moscow or Berlin or Paris or New York or Toronto, if you put up solar panels, you're never going to generate enough electricity to pay down the carbon debt that it took to build them in the first place. Just leave the economics to the side. The carbon side is a disaster. But there's a broader problem here, and that's we won't be able to build the stuff in the first place. If we really do want to decarbonize and hit net zero, then by the year 2030, we need 2 to 3 times as much copper and 10 times as much nickel and 18 times as much lithium and on and on and on and on. Humanity has never doubled the volume of any industrial material that was already in use in a 10-year period. And now we have to do this for 11 different materials and a lot more than doubling. No, can't be done. Now, there's enough out there for the United States, but that would require the United States conquering Congo and taking a big bite out of northern Russia and parts of northern China and South Africa. That's probably not going to happen. We just need a new technological breakthrough in material science before we do this at scale. So I'm concerned that a lot of what we're doing right now is wasting capital and increasing our carbon footprint in the name of reducing our carbon footprint. Let's start by saying that when it comes to international institutions, they only have as much power as their member states give them. And that makes them fairly truncated. They're talk shops, that's useful, but they're not into governance in any meaningful way. The institution that's going to be most important moving forward is the U.S. Federal Reserve. We're entering a world where most of the major countries don't have enough young people to consume. And what is monetary policy if not the ability to regulate consumption? So we have exited the last period of synchronized global consumption-led growth. We'll never have that again because there aren't enough people. And when we get to the next downturn, whenever that is, only the Federal Reserve is going to have the tools necessary in order to stimulate consumption in the United States again, which means the United States de facto is going to be setting monetary policy for the world because the Europeans, the Japanese, and the rest won't be able to do anything. It doesn't matter if you drop interest rates if there's no one there to buy. So we're seeing this breakup and this unification of the global economic system all at the same time with one authority basically setting policy for everyone, but the trade links that allowed that policy to percolate everywhere more or less going away. We're entering unknown territory here. I mean, we've had ups and downs and unifications and breakups and trade systems over and over and over through history, but we've never had the sort of build that we've seen under globalization, where we basically all joined a single global whole with differentiated supply chains and materials crossing the globe as a matter of course. There was also always population growth before. So even if you did break away, you'd still have something to build on. We don't have that anymore. Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. I forgot about that one. Okay, so if we do have a degree of breakup, there are places that have more going for them than others. One of the big things about globalization is the United States basically declared that geography doesn't matter, that we'll take care of security. You can access our market and everyone else's market as long as you side with us against the Soviets. And that created the global system. You break that down, and geography matters again, because you're going to have to do a lot of it yourselves. The 4 countries that kind of have the magic mix of geographic features that give them security and an economic shot are France, especially post-EU, Turkey today, although they have to get through a financial crisis first, Japan, which even though it has horrible demographics, it's been grappling with this and addressing that issue now for 40 years and has done a decent job, and Argentina, which I will never say is a country you should follow financially, but they have the assets and the physical location to persist in their current form for at least another century, and compared to most countries, that's just not on the cards. Those, plus the United States, those 5 are the ones that are going to be able to influence their own neighborhoods to their own liking. And then there's kind of a secondary set where the demographics are pretty good, the security's pretty good. They won't be able to project power, but they're going to be very good by themselves. All of Southeast Asia falls into that bucket, and a fair amount of Latin America, especially Mexico, does as well. So it's not that we're going to see a world of no growth. It's we're going to see a very split world with some parts of it doing very, very well. India makes that second list, can't project power, it's on its own. And with the exception of the Pakistan question, it's pretty much going to get left alone unless it decides to go on a little foray in the Persian Gulf, which could get really interesting really fast. I think the US dollar is only going to become more important. Let me start by saying any international organization of which China and India are both members is one that doesn't do anything because they have different opinions on everything that matters. That includes this currency talk. And if you want to have a new reserve currency, there's a few things you need. You need an absolutely massive amount of currency to lubricate the trade. That eliminates any sort of international partnership. And now you're only talking about the yen, the yuan, the US dollar, and the euro. You need a country that is not involved in international trade from its own point of view. It can't be important to it. So in the case of China, where you're talking 40% of GDP is directly or indirectly linked to trade, they would manipulate the currency day in, day out to get what they want, like they're doing now, like they always have done. The Europeans confiscated insured bank deposits, so no one trusts the euro to be a currency of exchange. And the yen tried this back in the 1980s and got burned, and they'll never do it again. You also have to have a system that isn't going to monetize like mad. And yes, the United States has monetized, but China has done it so to a factor of 5 more. And the total money supply in China is over double that of the United States, despite the fact that it's not a trade currency. So there's no combination of currencies, no individual currency out there that work. And if countries tried to pool and do a joint currency, who runs it? Because they're going to run it for themselves. If you have an independent authority, that will be the most bribed person on the planet. So there's nothing about this that is going anywhere. And in the world we're moving to, where international trade links break, it is even more important to have a singular store of value that doesn't care about the day-to-day value. So ironically, the less trade there is in the world, the more important it's going to be for everyone to have access to the US dollar. Which means if you think the United States has gotten a little bullying and with the Russians on currency policy of late, just wait till there's no global trade system to support and the Americans can really let rip.
Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Zeihan, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, Mapping the Collapse of Globalization. This is the most recent book of Peter. Peter is a geopolitical strategist. Thank you very, very much for taking the time and taking part in this episode.
My pleasure.